Welcome back to From the Burbs to the Teton. This video is going to be another one in a long series of smart home devices and making your house a smart home. So recently we've been having problems with our router, and I've been waiting for the next generation protocol to become a standard, and the next generation is AX. And so I went ahead and made the plunge and bought a new router. That's the router, Netgear. I'm a big fan of Netgear. I've used them for a long time. I've tried a couple other ones, but I keep coming back to Netgear. Now these routers usually, as far as the technology goes, last for a couple of years, but the routers themselves, I usually get 4 to 5 years out of them unless I really want to change them, specifically for the technology or if they break. I've had a problem with that where the companies don't upgrade the BIOS. The way to look at a BIOS for a router is like the operating system. Imagine Microsoft not updating their operating system for 2 or 3 or 4 years. Actually, that might be a good thing these days. I like Linux a lot more than Windows anymore, and it's a pretty good desktop these days. But I digress. So let's go ahead and unbox this. So what you have is the router on top. You have kind of a quick start guide. Most of the time these days that's about all they include for you, because they expect you to go online to look at the documentation. The power cord and an Ethernet cord to hook it into the, it's probably a patch cord for hooking up the main internet connection to your provider. So let me get this out of the way. Now what you do is, with this model, it's really simple. You take out this rubber shipping piece, you bring them up, the wings up, and you just wiggle the wings into place. I'm going to leave them down for right now just so it's easier for me to move it around and show you things. So let me give you a close-up to the back here. So what you've got is you've got 2 USB ports. The blue means that it's USB 3.x, probably 3.0. LED, some people get into having their computers light up. I do not. It's on the on position. We'll move that to off. There's a reset button. You have 5 Ethernet ports. Then you have the one internet port I was talking about. The internet port probably supports 4 or 5 protocols that are pretty common between the providers. And most of these days you plug it in and it automatically handshakes, so you don't have to do anything. An on-off button and the power cord. And then when you bring it up, looks like a spaceship, from Star Wars. Okay, so one thing that we will talk about is placement of your router. A big no-no is don't put it near the electrical box. Unfortunately, a lot of times, wherever your electrical box is, it also happens to be where a lot of the other penetrations for your house are at, which would be water, gas, TV, Wi-Fi, that kind of stuff. So if that's your case, don't use the cable provided. Go buy a 30 or 40 foot cable and move it and put it away from it. The other thing to think about is also how close you want it to a wall. The reason being is that everybody says, well, yeah, I have horrible connectivity on the 3rd floor and I don't understand why. Well, so let's say this is a wall and this is the signal. Now when the signal is going straight up and down, right, or this is the floor above it, it's hardly going through any wall. And if it's going horizontally, it's hardly going through any wall. But that's not how we use our Wi-Fi, right? So let's say this is the router, this is a wall, and I'm standing here on the 1st floor from the basement. Now my signal goes like this, and it's quite a bit more, maybe 3 or 4 times thicker at that point. The wall looks to the signal. And then if you also go this way for the ceiling, it might double. right, in this example. So putting it where you can minimize these angles to walls is important for a better signal in your house. The other thing to think about too is that these they have extenders now that allow you to keep the same name, so when it catches a stronger signal it just switches to that one. It's a good idea to look at those, and then if you do, then what you want to do is you want to do them vertically, one floor at a time, so that way the signal is always going, you know, perpendicular through a wall. So hopefully each floor you get is picked up by the extenders through vertical or horizontal. Well, both vertical and horizontal. So just something to keep in mind for a stronger strength is a good smart placement of your router. So let's go ahead and get it hooked up and configure it and get it running. This is not the screen that you normally would get. I forgot to record the screen and I didn't want to go through it again because it's a very simple screen. It's going to come up with two buttons. The first button says, do you want to automatically install? And the next one is, do you want to manually install? Click the automatic. Mine did not set up properly, primarily because of the hub that I have coming from FiOS. So I have fiber optics coming into a hub, and then that hub turns it from fiber to Ethernet or coax, depending on what you ask the tech to do. I asked them to set up Ethernet. The problem is the hub isn't really good at recycling your IP address. So FiOS sends an IP address to you for you to use, and I don't know how often they regenerate that IP address. 24 hours is pretty normal, sometimes 48 hours. So it kind of got stuck in no man's land. Just go ahead and turn off the hub, and that's all I had to do. I unplugged it, I left it unplugged for a couple of minutes, and I did leave it for a couple of minutes so it would completely lost track of by the main system. So it would, when it came on, it would know, oh, I've got to get this guy a new IP address. That's what I did. The new IP address came in, the new Netgear router started working immediately. Once that started working and you come in, the first thing it's going to ask you is to update the router firmware. And I went ahead and did that. Now you're basically set up, but there may be a few other things that you want to do. These newer routers now come with a network name and password that's unique to the router. You can leave those, and a lot of people do, but I've been using my own name and password for my router for years. So I'm going to go in and set those up. Now there's actually 4 Wi-Fi networks. There's the 2 private ones at 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, and then there's matching public ones. And then another thing I set up, which really isn't necessary for most people, this is kind of like getting into a little advanced stuff, I go ahead and limit the IP addresses that are given out by the router. And that's just so they're easier to track. I reserve certain IP addresses for very specific things like servers and printers. And it doesn't hurt to just go look at the security. If you're not sure what you're looking at, leave it alone, because they've gotten smart and they usually leave the security on either medium or high and not low. It won't hurt, but don't worry about it if you don't understand that kind of stuff and don't feel like you need to mess with it. I'm going to leave it there. I don't want to get too technical. I have a lot of experience setting these up with like gaming system and port forwarding and dynamic DNS. If you guys really want to hear some of that stuff, just leave a comment down below. I can do a more advanced setup, but I think for this channel it makes sense just to keep it simple. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe. We always appreciate that. And if you want to know when a new video is going up, go ahead and hit that bell button.